Hi, this is Mr. Cordes, and today, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Death of Ivan Ilyich overview for chapters 1, 2, and 3. You've had a chance to get through the beginning part of our story. This really kind of sets us up for what happens through the rest of the novel. Tolstoy does a weird narrative thing when he takes the ending of our story and he puts it first. So as you read through chapter 1, it talks about the funeral, and Ivan's already dead. You can see right here on that very first page, Ivan Ilyich has died. And the story takes place during the funeral where people come to interact with each other, to pay their condolences. You'll notice that the perspective, Ivan's not there. Well, he's there, but he's not interacting with anyone, obviously, because he's dead. But he doesn't have any say-so or insight. Now, with that being said, as you progress through, the narrator of our story stays very close with Ivan. It's what we call like a limited omniscient narrator, where they are focused. They're still third person outside, but they're focusing solely on that main character. Okay. However, here in this first chapter, it's a very omniscient, very hands-off, just descriptive and describing what's happening. So the very first thing that you see is a lot of people arguing about Ivan's job and if they should be able to get his position. You see his family come in and they kind of argue and they're upset. They're not. No one is there really in mourning or in sadness. You see a lot of people kind of there on this selfish side. His coworkers want his job. His wife's concerned about money, right? I think it's his daughter who's super annoyed that she has to be there and take time out of her day. So we kind of really see like, oh, what if people are reacting like this? Who was Ivan? Okay, we don't know anything about Ivan's personality or who he is or what he's done, but we're getting these reactionary responses from everyone else. Okay, I've got my book in front of me. If you can see here, I've got tons of notes that I put down just because I've annotated this text so much. But the very first chapter sets us up, and Tolstoy, our author, does this purposefully so we can see everyone else's reaction and almost get like a biased perspective of our main character. And knowing the protagonist, if we had just started off, we would almost have this like sympathetic or empathetic feel, and it would give a different tone to the novel. Okay, the tone is very depressing. Sorry, it's Russian literature, but it's very depressing. And the way to off balance that or to offset that is to put the funeral first and let everyone's else reactions come in. Okay. So in the very first chapter, you see these interactions. Peter, Ivan's friend, is probably the only one who kind of just offers condolences, comes with sadness and empathy for the family. His name's right here, Peter. And as you go through, he's made a mess of things like you and I. There's lots of things that come in where you just kind of feel like Ivan is not a good guy. And you get that feeling. And so you kind of want to figure out why. This is a technique that authors will use to intrigue you, to get you hooked into a novel or a story. And Tolstoy does that, rather well. Okay. So the very first chapter is the funeral scene and I would strongly suggest, identifying those characters. When you were doing your homework and you were looking at these components, obviously family would be a big one, but what does that say? What does the morality say about his family or the propriety, right? His coworkers are definitely in a sense of propriety because they care more about the job in that moment than they do sitting and mourning the loss of their friend. So as you fill out your homework page, yes, you can put down things like maybe about the wife and the wife wanting money and wondering how she's going to pay for things. And in the analysis, what does that tell me about her character? Or what does that tell me about what we think about the relationship that she has or does not have with her deceased husband? Excuse me. So understand that we can look at different components of this. It's not just what Ivan is doing. It's not just what has happened to him, but the everything around them. Okay. In chapter 2, let me go back over to my book. Here we go. In chapter 2, it takes us all the way back to his childhood. We get to see Ivan as a child. We find out that he's the middle child. We find out that he does not have a very good relationship with his parents. It kind of begins to say, let me find where it is. It does say that he has good nature. Like he's not a kid that gets in trouble a lot. You could see here he had 3 sons. Ivan was born second, so he's the middle child, which clues you into a lot of things already. You look here, he's neither cold and formal as his older brother, nor wild and younger, but was a happy mean between them, an intelligent, polished, lively, and agreeable man. So he's a good kid. He agrees with things. He goes with things. He doesn't have any huge temperament issues. So you begin to see that he goes into law because that was acceptable. He's putting aside his own preferences about what he wants to study to appease his father and the family legacy of going and being a lawyer and working in that field. As you continue, it begins to talk about his work. There's a part where it talks that he never abused his power. He kind of just went along with everything and did what he was supposed to do in his job, kind of like working the corporate ladder as best as he possibly could. There is a part where it says that he got married. Now, it also insinuates during this time that he got married because it was the thing to do. After living for 2 years, he met his future wife. Okay. Established lighthearted playfulness relations. They've been in good offense. So really, why shouldn't I marry? So it's kind of like this is the next natural step. This is the social order. I'm going to go ahead and get married. It's kind of like it's right here. So Ivan Ilyich got married. Very like nonchalant thing when you make such a big decision to get married. And so he is going along with it in order for his sense of propriety. He's giving up his beliefs or values to just say, yes, I should be married because that's what corporate people have. They've got not only a good career, but they also have a family. I must look and appeal to this. Therefore, I got to have it. And so he finds this woman, and they get married and they start a family. They've got 2 kids. You'll see there's a part in here as you begin to progress. It says, evolved such an attitude towards marriage. The birth of their children. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Realized that marriage, though it may not add comforts to life, was in fact an intrinsic and difficult affair towards which, in order of performs one's duties, is to lead a decorous life approved by society. So this is an idea of propriety right here. One must adapt to the definite attitude just as towards one's social duties. So he thinks in his mind, okay, I'm married, I got to do this, I got to do that. I'm a father now, I got to do this, got to do that. So he approaches it not with he approaches it with the mindset of this is something else I have to do in order to establish myself and have a good reputation and project this image of success. Okay, so it's not a family like because he loves a family and he wants a family. It's the idea of, this is what it looks like to be successful, to have a career and a family, and be a father and a husband. So you can kind of see what's being skewed. This definitely right here is part of the morality and propriety. So that right there is going to be beneficial for us understanding how he goes in. Now, remember, this is the first chapter in which we are introduced to Ivan. So all of these things us as readers are taking into account as we start. Okay, so we already know what people think of him by the end of his life. Now this is like the start of his life and how he is making and why he is making such decisions. Okay. As we progress through, let me go back here. We get into chapter 3, where it talks about, let me get down to chapter 3, it talks about him doing his job and him doing he's doing an adequate job, but he's not succeeding in the way that he believes he's succeeding. So in this very first part, he's passed up for a promotion, and so that's kind of devastating for him. There is a part in here towards middle where it talks about him doing a good job and being recognized by that, but still it's not what he deems as successful. It continues on where it begins, let's see, that he kind of begins to just get numb and go along with emotions. Let me try to find and match it. Oh, so he departed. The cheerful state of mind induced by his success and the harmony between his wife and himself, in one intensifying the other, did not leave him. So he found a delighted house, just the thing that both he and his wife dreamed of, spacious, lofty, blah, blah, blah. So he's like, okay, I've got all these things, and yet he's trying to figure out if he's really happy or not. So he's trying to find that balance. So there's this idea of, okay, I can be successful at work, I can be successful in my personal life at home, but he's trying to figure out what is actually bringing him happiness, and he's not really sure because he just got passed up for a job, a higher position, and higher pay. And so then therefore in his mind, he doesn't feel successful. So he's really struggling with that because he's doing everything he's supposed to be doing, that sense of propriety, right? He's doing everything he's supposed to do that's acceptable by the environment in which he lives in, and yet he's not progressing in rank. So it's kind of odd. Let's see here. It begins to talk about, there's more in chapter 3 that talks about him acknowledging stuff within his family, the idea that him and his wife don't get along at times, and there's like these arguments back and forth. So it kind of, as much as he's looking in chapter 3 about where to find that balance, it drifts into this argument where him and his wife are arguing about desserts, where there's quarrels, there's fights, there's things that just don't make sense, but he's feeling nagged about it. And so this kind of shows us the everyday normal life and him trying to balance out success and happiness and the duties of a husband and a father and as part of his business. So he's really, really, really trying to figure all of those things out. Okay. So stepping back for chapters 1, 2, and 3, you see his funeral, you see his childhood and the early stages of his marriage, and then you see like his everyday normal life with his wife and the conflicts. You see here, even I just stopped on, and this was not done purposefully, but the illusions of divorce. Like maybe that will make me happy, but then I wouldn't be as successful because it would look like my marriage is a failure. So he goes back and forth. Really trying to kind of balance this out. And that's what chapter 3 is. Okay. As you continue to read forward, when you get into chapter 4, that's where his illness begins and you understand how it happens and why it happens. But this really helps us understand who Ivan is as a person. So in the chapter 1, you got how everyone reacted to him. And then you've got chapters 2 and 3, which really identify his like his life and his setup and maybe why the things that he does are the things that he does. Okay. I hope that's beneficial for you. This is we're just getting into it. It's so good. Continue on. As we progress through, you will begin to notice that the chapters get shorter and shorter and shorter. So chapters 2 and 3 are rather large simply because they contain a lot of information. And as he progresses closer to death, the chapters get shorter and shorter and shorter, just like his life gets shorter, shorter, and shorter. So it's going to be interesting to see as we progress through how those things play out and how Ivan chooses to respond to those. Okay. Message me if you have any questions or concerns. That's the overview of chapters 1, 2, and 3 for Death of Ivan Ilyich.